Assalamualaikum and hello. Today I will talk about clause 4, which is the context of organization. At 4.1 is to understanding the organization and its context, which is the organization. All organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affect its ability to achieve the intent, outcome, or result. 4.2 is understanding the needs and expectation of interested party, which is for the EMS, the interested party that's relevant to the environmental management system and relevant needs and expectation of the interested party, which is of this need and expectation become its compliance and obligations. Okay, for OHS management system, uh, that other interested party in addition to workers that relevant with OHS management, and it's also relevant needs and expectation of worker and other interested party. Okay, for QMS is the interested party that are relevant to quality management system. The requirement of this interested party that are relevant to the quality management system. Okay, 4.3, determining the scope of environmental management system or HNS management system and quality management system, which is the point 1 and point 2 refer to 4.1 and 4.2. The point 3 is for EMS, the organization, unit, function and physical boundaries, activity, product and service, authority and ability to exercise, control and influence. Okay, for OHS management system, point 3 take into account the planned or performance work related service. Okay, 4.3 of QMS is the product and service of the organization. Okay, 4.4 environmental management system and OHS management system is same. The organization establish, implement, maintain and continually improve on management system, include the process, need and their interaction. Okay, for the quality management system and its process, 4.4 separate to 2 points, which is 1 and 2, which is the organization also to determine the process need, such as input required or output expect. Then the point 2, to extend necessary, maintain and retain document information to support and have confidence the process. Okay, clause 5, which is the leadership. For the quality management system, okay, we go to quality management system. The leadership and commitment separate to 2 points, which is 1 general and 2 is customer focus, which is the top management shall demonstrate taking accountability, ensuring the quality and policy, quality and objective, ensuring the integrity of quality management system, promote the use of the process, and ensuring that the resource need. Okay, for customer focus is customer and applicable statutory and requirement are determined. The risk and the opportunity can affect conformity of the product or service. The focus to enhance customer satisfaction and maintain it. Okay, for the OHS management system, which is the leadership and the workers participant. 5.1 leadership and commit. Top management shall demonstrate taking overall responsibility, such as injured, ill health at workplace. Then point B is ensuring that OHS policy related object. Then point C, ensure integration of the management system requirement to organization business process. Okay, for the environmental management system, 5.1 is leadership and commitment. To demonstrate the leadership and commitment, specific responsibilities related to EMS, which is top management should direct. Top management may delegate responsibility for this action, but it retains accountability to ensure that action are performed. Okay, I will talk about 5.2, which is we go to the quality management system. 5.2 policy, which is 5.2.1, establish the quality. Top management shall establish, implement and maintain a quality of the organization and support its strategy direction. Then provide framework as a setting quality objective. Then include a commitment to certify applicability requirement. And D is include a commitment to continual improvement. Okay, 5.2.2 communicating the quality policy, which is A, be able and be maintained as a documented information. B, communicate, understood and applied within the organization. Then be able to relevant interested party as appropriate. Okay, 4.5 OHS management system, which is the policy shall be able documented information be communicate within the organization, be available to interested party as appropriate, then be relevant. Then for EMS, which is environmental policy, the shall be able to document information, be communicate within the organization, be available to interested party. Okay, 5.3 organizational roles, responsibilities and authorities, which is the EMS, OHNS and QMS. The top management shall assign the responsibility, such as ensuring that EMS conform to the requirement of this international standard. B, reporting on the performance of the EMS, including environmental performance, to top management. Then for OHS management system, top management shall assign responsibility and authority for ensure that the management system conform requirement of this document. Reporting on the performance of the OSM management system to top management. Okay, for QMS, the top management shall responsibility and authority for ensuring that QMS conform the requirement of this international standard, ensuring the process delivering their intended output. Reporting the performance of QMS, then ensuring the promotion of customer focusing throughout the organization, then ensuring that the integrity of QMS is maintained. Okay, for 5.4 consultation and participation of workers, which is the organization shall provide the mechanism, provide the timely access to clear information about OSHNS management system, then determine and remove the barriers to participate and minimize those that cannot be removed. At point D, emphasize the consultation of non-managerial workers on this following, which is you can refer to my slide. And then point E is emphasize the participation of non-managerial workers in the following. You also can refer to my slide.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Narmim Idayu binti Ismail. So I will explain the cloud stage, which is planning. As we all know, planning means the process of making for something or actions and implementation to achieve the goals. For the clouds, we have two parts for ISO 40001 and ISO 45001. But for the ISO 9001, we have three parts, which is 6.1 about the action to address risks and opportunities. Next, 6.2 about the environmental objective and planning to achieve them, and additional part. This is additional part for ISO 9001 is planning of changes for 6.3. Okay, so we will go one by one. For 6.1, which is action to address risks and opportunities. In general, for planning, the organization should establish, implement, and maintain the process needed to meet the requirements in general to planning actions. As you can see here, there are three similarities between ISO 40001, 9001, and 45001. For these three ISO, when planning for this each ISO, the organization should consider the issues referred to three scope, which is understanding the organization and its content, and requirement referred to its understanding the needs and expectation, and also the scope for determining the risks and opportunities in which a need to address to give assurance that management system for each ISO can achieve its intended outcomes. Next, the three ISO address to prevent, reduce undesired effects which can contribute harmful to the environment, is including potential for external environmental conditions to affect the organization. And lastly is these three ISO need to achieve continually improvement in order to maintain the good effects to the environment. Okay, so we move to the next slide. These three ISO organizations shall maintain documented information of its risks and opportunities, and also the process and action needed to make sure the effectiveness of these actions and carry out as planned. Also, in the scope for ISO 40001, we have 6.1.2, which is environmental aspect. Environmental aspects mean that elements of an organization's activity that interact or can interact with environmental like flora, fauna, water, and air. It explains about the defined scope of the environmental management system. The organization shall determine the environmental aspects of its activity, products, and services that it can control, and those it can influence, and their associated environmental impact, considering a life cycle perspective. Next, 6.1.3, which is compliance obligation. The organization shall determine and have access to the compliance obligations related to its environmental aspects. Determine how these compliance obligations applies to the organizations, and take this compliance obligation into account when establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving its environmental management system. And last, planning actions for 6.1.4, where the organization shall plan to take action to address its significant environmental aspects and compliance obligations. So we will see the ISO 45001. There have another scope, which is 6.1.2, for explaining about the hazards identification and assessment of risks and opportunities. For hazard identification, the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain a process that is ongoing and proactive. But for the risk, the organization shall assess occupational health and safety risks from identified hazard, while making into account the effectiveness of existing control, and determine and assess other risks related to the establishments, implementations, operation, and maintenance of the OH&S management system. For the 6.1.3, is about determining the legal requirements and other requirements, whereas the organization shall determine and access to up-to-date legal requirements and other requirements that are applicable to its hazards. OH&S, a risk and management system, and determine how this legal apply to the organizations, and what need to be communicated, and also take this into account when establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improve. Lastly, planning action for 6.1.4, whereas the organization shall plan actions to address this risk and opportunity, and also legal requirement. Next one is 6.2, 2 is about the environmental objectives and planning to achieve them. Actually, the objective for these three ISO is quite same, which is for ISO 14001 is to consistent with the environmental policy, ISO 9001 is to consistent with the quality policy, and for the ISO 45001 is to consistent with the OH and S policies, means it's follow their own ISO. Then for the P until F, actually it's quite same, where they need to measurable, take into account, be relevant, and monitor, communicated, and the last one, there's 3 ISO needs to update it as appropriate. And last one, next is when planning how to achieve environmental objective, the organization shall determine what will be done, what resources, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how the result will be evaluated. And the last one for ISO 45001, the additional part is the organization also shall determine how to action to achieve OH and S objective will be integrated in the organization business process. Okay, so the lastly is 6.3, which is planning of changes. This scope only have for ISO 6001, where in this scope the organization shall consider the purpose of the changes, where they need to identify the reason why the changes happen and what will be the effects, and that's the integrities of the quality management system and availability of resources, the allocation and reallocations of responsibilities and authorities. Okay, that's all for clause 6, which is planning. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Farid bin Habibul Mutsidin. Today I'm going to share what's inside the clause 7 in ISO 14001, 9001 and 45001 document, which is support. Okay. 7.1 is about the resources. The general is the organization shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the management system. As per the ISO 9001, the 7.1.2 is about people. The organization shall determine and provide the persons necessary for the effective implementation of its quality management system and for the operation and control of its processes, which the organization must provide their workers with the necessary things to optimize their implementation of the management system. And then the 7.1.3 is about the organization shall determine, provide, and maintain the infrastructure necessary for the operation of its processes and to achieve conformity of product and services. The infrastructure can include the buildings, the equipment, which including the hardware and software, and then the transportation resource, and then lastly the information and communication technology. The 7.1.4 is about the environment for the operation of processes. The organization shall determine, provide, and maintain the environment necessary for the operation of its processes and to achieve conformity of products and services. Means that the organization must provide the environment that's suitable for the operation. Next, the 7.1.5 is about the monitoring and measuring resources. The organization shall ensure that the resources provided are suitable for the specific type of monitoring and measurement activities being undertaken, and then maintain to ensure their continuing fitness for their purpose. When measurement traceability is a requirement or is considered by the organization to be an essential part of providing confidence in the validity of measurement results, measuring equipment shall be first calibrated or verified, or both, at specified intervals or prior to use against measurement standards traceable to international or national measurement standards. When no such standards exist, the basis used for calibration or verification shall be retained as documented information. Next, identified in order to determine their status. And lastly, safeguarded from adjustments, damage or deterioration that would invalidate the calibration status. Then the 7.1.6 is about the organizational knowledge. It is information that is used and shared to achieve the objectives. Organizational knowledge can be based on internal sources. For example, the lessons learned from failures and successful of projects. Next, the external sources. The example of external sources is gathering knowledge from the customers. In 7.2, it is about the competence. The 7.2 is similar for the three of this document, which state that the organization shall determine the necessary competence of persons doing work under its control that affect its environmental performance and its ability to fulfill its compliance obligations. Next, ensure that these persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. Then, determine training needs associated with its environmental aspects and its management system. Where applicable, take actions to acquire the necessary competence and evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken. And lastly, retain appropriate documented information as evidence of competence. Next, the 7.3, which is about the awareness. The general is similar for the three documents, which state that the workers need to aware of the environmental for the ISO 14001 and quality for the ISO 9001 and the OSH policy and objectives for the ISO 45001. And then their contribution to the effectiveness of the management system, including the benefits of enhanced performance. Lastly, the workers need to aware of the implications of not conforming with the management system requirements. And then for the ISO 45001, state that the workers need to aware of the incidents and the outcomes of the investigations that relevant to them. Next, the hazards or risks and actions determined that relevant to them. And lastly, the ability to remove themselves from work situations that they consider danger to their life or health, as well as the arrangements for protecting them from undue consequences. The 7.4 is about the communication. It is similar for the three documents, which state that the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain the processes needed for internal and external communications relevant to their management system, which is on what will it communicate, when to communicate, with whom to communicate, and how to communicate. And then the organization shall take into account its compliance obligations and ensure that environmental information communicated is consistent with information generated within the management system. And then for the internal communication, said that the organization shall internally communicate with information relevant to their management system, uh, which they need to communicate among the various levels of the organization. It includes the changes of the management system. And then ensure its communication processes enable persons doing work under organizations control to contribute to continual improvement, not just to maintain their performance, but to improve. And then for the external communication, state that the organization shall externally communicate information relevant to the management system as established by the organization's communication processes and as required by its compliance obligations. Uh, the last point in the clause 7 is 7.5, which is about the documented information. It states that the organization shall include documented information required by the international standard And then documented information determined by the organization as being necessary for the effectiveness of the management system. The extent of the documented information for a management system can differ from one organization to another due to the size of organization and its type of activities, processes, products, and services. Next, the complexity of processes and their interactions. Lastly, the competence of persons or the workers. And then about the creating and updating, it states that the organization shall ensure appropriate identification and description. For example, the date and title. Next, the format and media, like what language they use in the document. And lastly, they shall ensure appropriate review and approval for suitability and adequacy. And then 7.5.3 is about control of documented information. It states that the documented information required by the management system and by the international standard shall be controlled to ensure it is available and suitable for use, where and when it is needed, and then it is adequately protected. For the control of documented information, the organization shall address the following activities as applicable: the distribution, access, retrieval, and use. And then the storage and preservation, including preservation of legibility, control of changes, and then retention and disposition. Documented information of external origin determined by the organization to be necessary for the planning and operation of the management system shall be identified as appropriate and be controlled. Documented information shall retain as evidence of conformity, shall be protected from unintended alteration. That's all from the clause 7, and that's all from me. Thank you.
In terms and definition for the 3 ISO, for the ISO 40001, conclude that establish, implement, control, and maintain the processes needed to encounter environmental management system requirements and implement the actions determined in clause 6.1 and 6.2. So the ISO 9001 conclude that establish, implement, and maintain a design and development process that is fitting to guarantee the consequent arrangement of products and services. And the last one for the ISO 45001, the organization shall be established, implement, control, and maintain the processes needed to requirements of the occupational safety and health management system and to apply the actions stated in clause 6. For the subclause 8, operational planning and control 8.1, so the 3 ISO share the same similarity, which is the organization shall establish operating criteria for the processes and implementing control of the processes in accordance with the criteria. So both ISO 14001 and 9001 share the same purpose, which is the organization shall control, plan changes, and review the consequence of intended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effects as necessary. But ISO 45001 conclude that at multi-employer workplaces, the organization shall coordinate the relevant parts of the occupational safety and health management system with the other organization. For the last subclause in ISO 14001 and 45001, which is emergency preparedness and response at point 2, which is the documented information. So the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain a process needed to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situation. It is necessary to have confidence that the processes are carried out as planned and plans for responding to potential emergency situations. So for the point 2, requirements for products and services in ISO 9001 is all about the determining, review, and changes all the requirements for product and services. So 8.2.1 discuss about the customer communication, which is providing information relating to the product and services. So 8.2.2 determining also the 8.2.3 review of the requirements for product services. So 8.2.3.1 the organization should ensure that it can meet the requirement for product and services to be offered to customer. So 8.2.3.2 is the organization should retain the document information, and the last one is 8.2.4 changes the requirements for products and services. For the 8.3 ISO 9001, which is the design and development of products and services. So the general, which is the terms and definition, the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain a design and development processes that is suitable to ensure the subsequent provision of products and services. So basically, this subclass discuss about the design and development containing that plannings, inputs, controls, outputs, and changes in the subclass 8.3.2 until 8.3.6. So for the control of externally provided processes, products, and services at point 4 in ISO 9001. So the terms and definition is the organization shall ensure the externally provided processes, products, and services conform to requirements and determine the controls to be applied to externally provided processes, products, and services. So this contain at point 4.2 types and extent of control, and 8.4.3 the information of external providers, which is the outsider and the third parties of the organization. Production and service provision 8.5 in ISO 9001. So the control of production and service provision determine the organization should implement production and service provision under control condition. So the next one, identification and traceability. So the next one is property belonging to customer or outsider. So the 8.5.4 is prevision, and the next one post-delivery activities, and the last one is control of changes in production and service provision. So for this subclass 8.6 release of products and services in ISO 9001. So the organization execute arrangements by suitable stages until the arrangement have been satisfactorily completed, unless something else endorsed by a significant authority and as applicable by the customer. For the last subclass 8 in ISO 9001, which is control and non-conforming outputs 8.7. So the organization should take suitable action based on the nature of the resistance and its effects on the similarity of products and services. So the organization should retain documented information. That the first one is the outline, the non-conformity. The second one is describes the actions taken. The third one relate any consensus obtained, and the last one identifies the authority deciding the action in respects of the non-conformity. Thank you.
Okay, we will go to the clause 9, which is environmental performance. Clause 9 was divided into 3, which is 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. So we will go to the 9.1, which is monitoring, measurement, analyze, and also evaluation. For ISO 14001 and ISO 45001, they have the same, which is the company focus more on evaluation of complaints, in which organization need to establish, implement, and maintain the process to evaluate the fulfillment of complaints obligation. This is under 9.1.2, which is evaluation of complaints, but it's different for ISO 9001 because ISO 9001 was focused more on customer satisfaction, which the need and expectation need to be fulfilled. This is also was under 9.1.2, but customer satisfaction. Okay, the second is ISO 9001 has additional on analyze and evaluation, which the organization will evaluate the data and information from monitoring and measurement. This is under 9.1.3, which is analyze and evaluation, but ISO 14001 and ISO 45001 do not have this evaluation. We will go to the clause 9.1.1, which is general. Okay, for ISO 14001 and ISO 9001, they have the same, which is the scope are more to the measurement, monitor, analyze and evaluate the environmental performance. While for ISO 45001, they have the additional to the legal requirement and activity of the organization. Okay, for the similarity is first we need to know what need to be monitored and measured, and where should it be performed, and what the method we use to monitor, measure and analyze the evaluation to make sure the valid result, and also organization shall retain the appropriate document information for evidence for monitoring, measurement, analyze and evaluation result. Next is clause 9.2, which is internal audit. For ISO 14001, the organization they conduct the internal audit at planned interval to provide information on quality management system, while ISO 9001, they provide information on environmental management system, and ISO 45001, they provide information on OH&S management system. This is under 9.2.1, which is general. Okay, the similarity of this clause is the organization shall establish, implement, plan and maintain the audit program, include the frequency, method and responsibility, planning requirement, and also they need to report of it internal audit. And when they establish the internal audit, they need to take the consideration of the environmental performance of the process that they concern, change that can affect the organization, and also need to know the result previous audit. Last is clause 9.3, which is management review. For ISO 14001 and ISO 45001, they need to review the organization environmental management system at planned interval, because they need to make sure the effectiveness, adequacy and continued suitability. While ISO 9001, they have additional on alignment to the strategic direction of the organization. Okay, for ISO 14001, they need to achieve the environmental objective, while ISO 9001, they need to know the information of the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. And last, for the ISO 45001, they need to meet the objective and policy of the OH&S management system. Okay, for the similarity is on audit result and also management output review, on which the organization need to continue suitability, adequacy, and also effectiveness in achieving the intent outcome.
Clause 10, which is the improvement, it means the actions of improving or being improved, or and also the thing that makes something better. This clause consists of 3 scopes. So I will explain the first scope, which is 10.1 is general, where actually you can see here these 3 ISO actually quite similar, where the organization shall determine the opportunities and improvement, and also implementing any necessary action to achieve the intended outcome. But it's a little bit different for ISO 40001 and ISO 9001, whereas it involves the measurement, analysis and evaluation for us in 9.1, and internal audit for in 9.2, and management review in 9.3, where the ISO 9001 is also need to implement the necessary action that meet the customer requirement and also enhance the customer satisfaction in improving their products and service and correcting, preventing, or reducing in any undesired effect, and also improving their performance for effectiveness of the quality management. Okay, next is 10.2, which is non-conformity and corrective actions. Actually, there are some similarities for these three ISO, whereas the organization shall react to non-conformity, or we can say as failures, whereas we need to take action to control and correct it. And also we need to deal the effects and mitigating adverse environmental impact. Next, we need to identify any action to remove the causes of non-conformities or failures by reviewing, determine the causes, and determine if similar nonconformities exist. Next, then for the C, if you can see that ISO 40001 and ISO 9001 is same, which is we need to implement the actions needed. And for the ISO 45001 is reviewing existing assessment of OH and S risk and other risks. Okay, so as you can see here, for D until G, actually it's quite similar, but there are some additional info for ISO 9001 and ISO 45001. But I can conclude here, actually they are same, where after implement any necessary action, they need to review the effectiveness and make the corrective actions. And the last one, the 3 ISO need to make changes to the tier management system. So next we can see the organization shall retain the commented information as evidence of the nature of the non-conformities and for the results of any corrective actions. Okay, lastly, for 10.3, which is continual improvement, which is to maintain and make it better for the future. For these three ISO, the organization must continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and its effectiveness. For ISO 9001, it is also consider the results of analysis and evaluation and the outputs to determine if there are needs that can be addressed as part of continual improvement. But it's a little bit different for ISO 45001, whereas the OH and S management system is continually improved by these three points, where enhance and promoting a culture and promoting the participation of workers, and the last one is communicating the relevant results of any continual improvement to worker, and also maintaining the recommended. That's all from me. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Hopefully you guys will understand more about the similarities and differences of these three ISO, which is 40001, 9001, and 45001. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.